Every year around the holidays, don't ask me why, the Grinch pops up everywhere. Just ask your eyes. From Walmart to Target, McDonald's and Crocs, to Spotify, Build-A-Bear, makeup and socks. He's viral on TikTok promoting new jammies while dancing to Britney and calling your granny. Yes, the Grinch has been everywhere. That's sure been fun. But how did he make it to Rue 21? No, seriously, I thought they went out of business like years ago. But who's making this stuff? Who's behind all the cheer? And why does it grow so much bigger each year? Well, let's take a peek past the glitter and gleam to uncover the dark truth of Seuss's machine. Good morning, Whoville. The Grinch is dead, and now corporations big and small are parading his crumpled, lifeless body around the world like a traveling taxidermy exhibit, profiting off of the money continually being thrown into his gaping maw that grows wider and wider each year, taunting us with the knowledge of our continued Christmas sins. It's too late to repent. We killed him decades before we even knew his name. That's too much. Let me start over. Hello, my name is Becca, and I do deep dives into the darkest and strangest parts of art and media history. And today, we really need to talk about the Grinch. If you've been paying attention while Christmas shopping this year, you may have noticed that a certain lime green section of products seems a lot bigger than it used to be. This is just a small sample of the companies collaborating with the Grinch for this holiday season alone. And the big G has been sticking his furry little mitts in more and more Who pudding every single Christmas season for the past few years, which seems odd because, not counting a random horror flick from 2022 that I wasn't aware even existed until recently,
you're a dead one, mister.
We haven't had any Grinch-related media come out for the past 7 years. So why does it feel like the Grinch is suddenly everywhere? Well, there's a simple reason. The Grinch is dead. And not in the like, we killed the true meaning of Christmas way, but in the like, no, literally he's dead. In fact, he's been dead since September 4th, 1991, because the Grinch is actually just a stand-in, a self-insert character, a Scooby-Doo rip-away mask. His real name is Theodore Seuss Geisel, aka Dr. Seuss, and he didn't want any of this. So today we're getting to the bottom of why there's so much Grinch everywhere, because no matter what this random Business Insider article says, it's not just because he's on TikTok or because he has knee surgery tomorrow. In order to understand modern Grinchomania, we first need to go back to the very beginning, before the Grinch was green, and before he was even written. We need to talk about how Dr. Seuss became the Grinch. It had been a hard few years for Theodore Geisel, Ted to his friends. Since 1954, Ted's wife Helen had suffered from something called Guillain-Barre syndrome, a rare condition where someone's immune system accidentally attacks their own nerves outside their brain and spine, which causes weakness, pain, tingling, and in some cases, including Helen's, paralysis. When she first contracted the illness in 1954, she was paralyzed from the neck down and was confined to an iron lung for a super long time. Ted, of course, stayed by her side and supported her throughout this difficult period, and with time and a lot of physical therapy, Helen was able to make an almost full recovery. However, Helen was still left with numbness and pretty awful chronic pain, which, combined with a minor stroke in 1957 and an ongoing battle with depression that would later take her life, made things really difficult for her and Ted. For most of us, it's hard to see anyone suffer that much, but when it's someone who's especially close to you, it makes it that much more difficult. And just so we're clear here, I'm not saying that his wife's physical and mental health struggles were what made Dr. Seuss into the Grinch, just that they could have contributed to a sense of stress, especially around the holidays. But that exhaustion wasn't the only thing that contributed to his Grinchiness, because in case you weren't paying attention to subtle messaging about big corporations and the dangers of corporate greed when you read the Lorax as a 6-year-old, which, lame, do better, Dr. Seuss was also pretty anti-consumerism, which, if you're you're not familiar with consumerism, it's society's focus on the idea that acquiring more and more material possessions will make you happier. So when it came to the 1950s, when there was a record-breaking economic and commercial boom following the end of World War II, which led to a huge rise in consumerism, especially around the holidays, it's pretty easy to see how our pal Ted could start to feel pretty Grinchy. Some people get confused by this because Dr. Seuss made a lot of his early money through creating advertisements. But if that's confusing to you, may I present the concept of having to have a job? Honestly, we can armchair psychologist all we want about why Dr. Seuss might have felt like the Grinch, but it doesn't really matter. And to quote the book,
"Please don't ask why, no one quite knows the reason."
But what we do know is that the Grinch is definitely inspired by Ted himself, because, well, he said so. In an interview with Red Book magazine, the magazine where The Grinch was first published, Ted talks about how he first had the idea for The Grinch Who Stole Christmas on December 26, 1956. As he stared in the mirror that day, brushing his teeth, he said he saw a very Grinchish countenance staring back at him. Something had gone wrong with Christmas, I realized, or more likely, with me. So I wrote the story about my sour friend the Grinch to see if I could rediscover something about Christmas that obviously I'd lost. And there's actually a couple of Easter eggs that Dr. Seuss includes in How the Grinch Stole Christmas that hint at the fact that he is the Grinch. Theodore Geisel was 53 years old when he wrote the book. He also had a pet dog named Clooney at the time he wrote the book, which bears a striking resemblance to Max. And fun fact, after doing an interview with the Saturday Evening Post in 1957, Clooney received not one, but 3 marriage proposals. Not Dr. Seuss, Clooney. Which just goes to show that people have been freaky since the beginning of time. I really don't understand that. The last and, in my opinion, most delightful detail about this whole situation is that for years after the book was first released, Dr. Seuss drove around town with a license plate that simply said, Grinch. And like I said earlier, I made all of these connections, but he also straight up just said that he was the inspiration for the Grinch. And the Cat in the Hat, actually, with his stepdaughter later saying that she believed that Seuss saw himself as the cat on his good days and the Grinch on his bad days, which I find very interesting, personally, because I love the Grinch, but I would literally rather be caught dead than be in a room alone with the Cat in the Hat. You can't look at this face and tell me that whoever or whatever this is has not committed war crimes. And I hold to that. But here's the thing with Dr. Seuss and his books. Dr. Seuss was actually well known for being extremely particular about how his stories were presented. And although he made his living off of selling his books, he wasn't exactly super eager to see his work touched by anyone else, let alone made into a movie. Enter Chuck Jones, an animation and cartoon director and fellow artist who had worked with Dr. Seuss on a bunch of cartoons and propaganda for the US military during World War II, which, man, we don't have time to get into all that, but it's an insane can of worms. So let me know if you'd be interested in watching a video at some point about Dr. Seuss's propaganda in art. But anyway, over the years, Chuck Jones had become, to put it lightly, a huge simp for Seuss. But when he first approached him, our good pal Ted was actually pretty reluctant to have him take on the role of making the film. However, after months of conspiring and drawing together in Seuss's glass-enclosed eagle nest, which sounds super cool, but I was extremely disappointed to learn is just a lame architectural term for a house that has a bunch of windows. Considering the fact that it's a house owned by Dr. Seuss, I don't know. I was expecting something like a little more whimsical, you know? But anyway, eventually they finished the storyboard that would later become the 1966 holiday classic, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. And that movie would become the beginning of the end. Although it received okay ratings when it was first released, the 1966 How the Grinch Stole Christmas would quickly rise through the ranks to become one of, if not the most beloved Christmas cartoon of all time, with pretty clear anti-consumerism undertones in it.
Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store.
This movie is also where we first saw the Grinch as green, inspired by the strange shade of green of the rental cars Chuck kept getting as they were making the movie. Another fun little tidbit here, the voice of the Grinch in this movie is Boris Karloff, the original actor of Frankenstein and renowned narrator of horror, which I thought was freaking rad. After the success of How the Grinch Stole Christmas, Ted and Chuck worked together on 2 more short spin-off cartoons featuring the Grinch, including one that's pretty much just Grinch versus Cat in the Hat fight to the death to control the fate of the planet, which was literally produced by Marvel. Nope, not that Marvel, a different Marvel. But that was pretty much the extent of all of the Grinch stuff we would get until something kind of unfortunate happened. Dr. Seuss died. And within a couple of years, all hell broke loose. But before hell, a quick sponsor. It may not be quite as tall as an eagle's nest, but FlexiSpot, the sponsor for this video, does literally make the tallest 4-leg standing desks in the world. Look at this. If I wanted to work from up here, I literally could, and I will. Trust me. It's also insanely sturdy, like maximum weight 540 pounds sturdy. No wobbling here. And even when lowering or raising the desk, it's incredibly smooth. Look at this hot cocoa. No ripples. As someone who works from home and also happens to suffer from chronic back pain, it's so nice to be able to shift positions and heights to make my workspace more comfortable. And the fact that it has 4 custom presets for different heights makes raising and lowering your desk literally as easy as pressing a button. And their prices are also way better than other high-end standing desk brands. And they offer a 15-year warranty with every desk, so I can honestly say that FlexiSpot is a financially smart choice if you're thinking of buying a high-quality standing desk. If you'd like your own awesome standing desk like this E7 Plus or the even more budget-friendly E7, FlexiSpot is currently having a huge sale, so it's a great time to get a new desk. FlexiSpot also offers additional discounts for students, teachers, healthcare workers, and more. So use my code YTE7P50 for $50 off, and click the link in the description to get a desk that's actually cool enough to be called something like an eagle's nest. But it's not, it's still just called a desk. And now, back to the video. Besides the couple of cartoons that he allowed Chuck Jones to make, Ted Geisel outright rejected every single request that was put in to make a movie from any Dr. Seuss books. Presumably, this was because he didn't feel like people would do a good job translating the material, which, to be fair, in a lot of cases...
Who is this? Oh.
That's my mom.
Awkward.
He was right. But regardless, after Theodore Geisel passed away in 1991 from complications from oral cancer, his second wife, Audrey Geisel, pretty much immediately was like, so, fellas, I know it kind of goes against his original wishes, but how about we get some stuff going here? Movie deals? How about like a Jim Henson directed puppet show? Some TV shows? Some clothing perhaps? Like sure, get that bag I guess, but dang Audrey, that felt faster than Joanne being taken over by Spirit Halloween. Let him rest for a second. I joke, but actually Audrey was an intense defender of her husband's content and legacy, only accepting deals that she felt really upheld his original intent. And so in 1998, when her agents revealed that the rights for a movie for How the Grinch Stole Christmas were being auctioned off, which would become the first Dr. Seuss movie since he died, she had incredibly high standards. In fact, they went through 8 different scripts before she approved, and Jim Carrey had to personally convince her that he was worthy of playing the Grinch. Obviously, she was eventually won over, and that's how the Grinch Stole Christmas 2000 was born. Now, if you haven't seen this movie, you should know it does have some interesting twists on the original Grinch. For one, instead of the whole no one quite knows why the Grinch hates Christmas thing, we actually very much know the reason. It's that after being born, after floating down in something called a pumbercella onto the porch of a well-meaning but kind of ditzy lesbian couple on Christmas Eve in the middle of them hosting a swingers party, he was accidentally left out in the cold until Christmas morning. But sorry, that's not actually why he hates Christmas. That's actually just the wildest backstory I've ever heard in my entire life. This was in 2000. That's crazy. And now, the actual reason he hates Christmas is because he was mercilessly bullied by all of his classmates and his teacher over the fact that he tried to shave his face to impress his crush on Christmas by looking more like a regular Who, and cut himself a bunch on the razor in the process, which, wow, no wonder this movie felt really sad and uncomfortable as a kid. That's genuinely heartbreaking. The other things about this movie that were a little different from the original, quick aside here, for Martha May Whovier, his crush and a lady who was absolutely not in the original book, and it kind of seems like her one purpose in this movie is to show her insatiable lust for the Grinch. Like, you know, book talk, Martha May Whovier is not just a book talk girly, she is the book talk girly. And there is nothing you can say to convince me she's not reading thousands of books in her spare time called things like Captured by the Grinch King, Bound to the Beast of Christmas, Fourth Sleigh, A Court of Holly and Hatred, Girl Likes Monsters. She doesn't just like monsters, she likes monsters. You know? You know what I'm saying? If not, the comments will teach you. And honestly, girl, get it. You know, like, sweet. Okay. Also, a bit of a difference along the same lines, there are quite a few adult jokes in this film, which I'm not exactly mad about, but I do feel like it was an interesting choice, because there weren't any in the source content whatsoever. Was everyone just super hot under the collar while making this movie? I don't know, but I guess it's Audrey Geisel approved, so go for it. Was Audrey? Maybe Audrey was a little freaky herself, you know what I'm saying? But what I really think was most interesting about this movie is that it kind of flips the Grinch from being a villain into being an anti-hero. Because this movie gives us the exact motivations behind his actions, rather than just saying that he hated Christmas because, I don't know, he just sucked. Maybe his shoes were too tight. It also introduces Cindy Lou Who as the sort of hero of the movie, and also the one who champions the concept of Christmas not coming from a store, which is an interesting shakeup from the original that I'm honestly not sure how I feel about. However, it is a fantastic movie, and it really deserves every bit of praise it gets. I could go on and on about how much I genuinely enjoy this movie, which was unexpected for me because I hated it as a kid, but I think a lot of the insane levels of dedication that people put into this movie is pretty well summed up with Jim Carrey's experience with the Grinch makeup.
Literally, the makeup was like being buried alive every day. The first day was 8.5 hours, and I went back to my trailer and put my leg through the wall. Then Brian Grazer came up with a brilliant idea, which was to hire a gentleman who is trained to teach CIA operatives how to endure torture. It was horrifying. I was just like, it's for the kids, it's for the kids, it's for the kids.
The 2000s Grinch goes hard. Sometimes a little too literally. And I do have an insane amount of respect for this movie. But I will say that the main theme of the original movie, which was pretty simple and anti-consumerism, is a bit more obscured behind all of the sad backstory and the raunchy humor. Now, does it perfectly convey Seuss's original intent for the story? Probably not, but I do still think it does a great job, and I genuinely think it is a work of art in its own way. But you know what movie I have no respect for whatsoever? 2018's The Grinch, which came out the same year that Audrey Geisel died after 27 years of helping run Seuss Enterprises. I hate this movie. I hated watching it. It's stupid and dumb and takes every redeemable feature of the first two movies, throws it in a blender, and gives us meaningless sludge. This movie sucks. And I have to be honest here, if your movie has a song that explicitly says that your main character has yellow teeth and you make them sparkling Colgate commercial white, you should die. Sorry, I wrote that paragraph at like 2 o'clock in the morning, so I definitely should have revised it. But seriously, I hate this movie. I think it sucks. Full disclosure, I watched that movie for the first time in order to make this video, and you may have been able to tell from my subtle hints, but I don't really think it's worth watching. It's fine at parts, but the Illumination humor is occasionally so bad it makes it super painful. It's so bad. And the Grinch song makes no sense in this movie because the Grinch isn't really nasty or mean at all. He's just like mildly annoyed. and a little lonely. Again, I say this as someone who hated the Jim Carrey Grinch growing up. I am a Grinch purist, but having watched all of the Grinch movies back to back in order to film this video, this one is far and away the worst one. It starts off showing how kind and good everyone is in Whoville, kind of to a weird, uncanny level, and throughout the movie it's filled with these kind of weird, clumsy rhymes that sound like they were written by ChatGPT.
Yes, Whoville is great. That is known far and wide. And 3 weeks through December, this place hits its stride.
It has the classic Illumination butt jokes and cringy humor. I have to be honest, this movie to me kind of just reads like you plugged Jim Carrey's Grinch into ChatGPT and you said, make it more family friendly. Also, don't include anything that was actually interesting about it. I think it's bad. I don't know. Oh my gosh, one last thing, actually. Maybe that's too close. For some reason, they decided to make all of the Who's in this movie Christian. After Dr. Seuss himself explicitly not doing that in the original story so that it would be applicable to all denominations and all kinds of families, it feels like a weird choice. Is there a Who Jesus? I have so many questions about this movie and it's not good. Finally, it completely takes away the original critique that was found in The Grinch, which is a message about overconsumption, and it replaces it with a message of, I guess, like the danger of loneliness and how great it is to have friends.
But now I see that it wasn't Christmas I hated. It was being alone.
Which is fine. It's just weird that it feels like it's not even like included, this concept of Christmas doesn't come from a store. Maybe because they were like, hey, Christmas actually does come from a store. If you like this movie, I'm sorry. It's really not that awful. I don't like it because it feels overly manufactured. Dr. Seuss has this quote about how a lot of children's content is patronizing to kids. That's kind of how this movie feels to me. Okay, so this, my friends, since 2018 is where things have really started to get insane with The Grinch. Like I mentioned at the beginning, it genuinely seems like The Grinch has had some sort of partnership or brand deal with every brand on planet Earth. From McDonald's to Walmart to American Eagle and Build-A-Bear and Crocs. It really feels like people are starting to catch on to the fact that Christmas seems a little bit Grinchier than it used to be. I've seen different articles and videos about it, but it doesn't seem like a lot of them get any deeper than, oh, it's because of the kids and their memes about knee surgery on TikTok. But it really feels like there has to be so much more to this than just, oh, the Grinch is a funny, relatable character. There are a lot of funny, relatable characters who don't have overalls with their face on them. There's gotta be something going on behind the scenes. So, I did a little bit of digging, and remember how I said that Audrey passed away in 2018? Yeah, well, Audrey Geisel wasn't the only one pulling strings in Dr. Seuss Enterprises behind the scenes. Since 1998 and the very beginning of Grinchomania, Seuss Enterprises has actually been controlled by this lady, Susan Brandt, third-degree Taekwondo black belt, two-time cancer survivor, and since 2018, the CEO of the multi-million-dollar corporation that is Seuss Enterprises. And what have we seen change since 2018? Grinchomania, baby. According to Kids Screen Media Summit, an international convention that deals with the business of children's media, since 1998, Susan Brandt has directed the worldwide operations of Dr. Seuss Enterprises. And the Dr. Seuss brand has expanded from books to include films, television, stage productions, theme parks, digital games, exhibitions, licensed products, and more. Under Susan's management, Dr. Seuss has strategically grown its consumer products business fourfold, expanding the brand with new franchises, product categories, and retail channels, all while maintaining the brand's perceived scarcity and position as a national treasure. Essentially, since 2018, Seuss Enterprises has taken an extremely aggressive approach of trying to get as much product out in the market as possible. And it's really really worked. For instance, in 2020 alone, in a year where most companies were losing tons of money because of the pandemic, they made $33 million. In 2025, it was estimated that they made $85 million, which means they increased their sales in the past 10 years by nearly 800%. And the Grinch is arguably the most lucrative character in the Dr. Seuss universe. The Seussiverse, if you would. So if you think you're seeing a lot of Grinch stuff right now, it's because you are. Now, why? Well, there are a couple of reasons. First is nostalgia. If you didn't know, it's the 25th anniversary of the 2000 Jim Carrey version of How the Grinch Stole Christmas. A lot of the people who grew up with this movie now have kids of their own, which means that there's a big market for nostalgia bait. And the 25th anniversary is arguably one of the best excuses you can have to push a bunch of nostalgia on people. Good memories make good money. And that brings us to our second point, which I hate to say it, but it does seem a little obvious. Corporate greed, especially under new management. After all, Seuss Enterprises is a for-profit company, which means that they need to grow bigger and bigger to maximize their earnings. Or at least, I initially thought that this was due to a sense of greed and power, until I did a little more digging and I figured out that the answer is sort of kind of the opposite, but it's kind of unclear. So let me explain a little more and you can make your own decision. See, Seuss Enterprises is recognized and runs as a for-profit company, but they have a very interesting business structure because they actually pledge to put 100% of the profits that they make right back into charity. Which, at first, I was like, sure, buddy. But then I looked into it and it actually seems pretty reputable. It's honestly a little bit hard to know for sure because with companies like this, there's always a chance that someone is misreporting things behind the scenes. But what I do think is absolutely awesome is that we have it very well documented that in the past 20 years, this company has existed. They have given over $300 million to charity, with a special emphasis on funding programs that help provide early literacy, education, healthcare, and housing to kids in need. For instance, just earlier this year in March, the Dr. Seuss Foundation donated $15 million to launch a program called Ready to Learn that focused on expanding access to early educational opportunities and improving reading skills for young kids in the San Diego area. They've also donated millions of dollars to support initiatives for animal welfare and environmental causes, including, perhaps most notably, the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance. So I would say that's pretty cool. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm some expert about the economics and things that go on in businesses like this. I don't know anything about how a business like this works. Could there still be a bunch of shady stuff going on behind the scenes that I just couldn't find or don't know about? Maybe. But it was comforting to me that we do have a really good record of this company doing what they say they're going to do. And that is investing a lot of money back into charities that help make the world a better place. Does this excuse the extreme mass consumption that we're seeing right now with all of the Grinch stuff? No. There is an absurd amount of things that, let's be completely honest, are being sold right now and they're gonna end up just in a landfill after a couple of years. Not exactly the message that the Grinch or the Lorax championed. In that way, we have completely and utterly polluted, pun intended, Dr. Seuss's original message of this book. It's dead. Just like Seuss. But I do think that there's a small amount of comfort in the fact that this company has also shown that they're serious about providing education and assistance to kids in need. In the end, I think this is a really nuanced issue. Overconsumption is a serious and very real problem, with over 2 billion pounds of garbage being thrown away every year, and that number expected to double by 2050. 20% of that is what's called durable goods, things that are made to last and not easily broken down. Because of this, we are considered to be in the midst of a global waste crisis. That being said, I would be lying if I didn't say there was also a part of me that was like, well, I'm glad it's going to a good cause in this case. But whatever your stance is on the Grinch, I think we can all agree that Christmas doesn't come from a store. And if you're like me, one of the ways that you've learned that is through reading, especially reading books like How the Grinch Stole Christmas. So this year for Christmas, I would love for you to think about donating to a nonprofit or charity that helps kids increase literacy. If you want my personal recommendation, I would recommend Room to Read, which has helped over 52 million kids in 29 countries improve their reading and gain access to better education. And it says on their website, Room to Read envisions a world free from illiteracy and gender inequality, where all children have room to read, learn, and grow, creating lasting change. Kids are the future of society. And in the society that we live in right now, it's so important that kids are able not just to read, but also to understand and comprehend what they're reading so that they can think critically about what's going on in the world around them. That's what I love about Dr. Seuss and his life's mission, and now the mission of Seuss Enterprises. This idea of spreading books across the globe and helping people. That's something that I really love about these literacy foundations, including the Dr. Seuss Foundation. Being able to understand the world around us is important for everyone, and that's kind of what I'm trying to do with this channel. But I've yapped long enough. In closing...
Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more.
Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to my patrons, and if you enjoyed this video, remember to like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And I will see you in the next video. Bye, and Merry Christmas.